I'm learning.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep telling myself that.
That's right. We get better every time.
Yeah, well, hopefully the sound is better too, because I had my headset in last time and people were telling me that the sound was muffled.
Okay. Well, you're
So,
coming through clearly on this end, so hopefully that
good.
translates.
Well, the chat will tell me if I don't sound good because that's what the chat does.
Yes, they'll tell us everything.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. We are back. So if you were here on Monday, you'll recall that I was on Therapy Today's channel. And today, Therapy Today is on my channel. And last time I was being interviewed, and I'm going to quit looking at the chat here. Last time I was being interviewed, but this time he's going to be interviewed. And I do have a very good list of questions.
Okay.
I mean, do you want to say, but you have something you should probably tell the audience before we get going.
Sorry about that.
About the hat. No, it's okay. Please.
Yeah. My cat just knocked the light over.
Oh, oops.
Ugh. I guess that's life, right? Sorry about that.
Oh no. He's
All
on
right,
my other
sorry.
side.
No. Well, I don't know. I'm sure you were gesturing towards a correct side on my stream, but it could be different for everyone else.
Apparently it's reversed on the other side, but whatever.
We can only do what we can. I'm sorry.
Do you want to tell people about the drawing for the hat?
Yeah, so I don't know what the details of the drawing are going to be, but at some point in this stream, I'm going to be offering a giveaway of a Mental Athlete Apparel hat. Now, I was wearing the Mental Athlete hoodie on Monday. I don't have one to model today, but it is a brand that I am working with. 15% of all of their proceeds go to local nonprofits serving youth who are struggling with mental illness, mental disorders in this area, and they are trying to decrease the youth suicide rate nationally. And so their website is mentalathleteapparel.com. If you use the code therapy today, so therapy number 2 day 325, you'll get 15% off on your purchase at mentalathleteapparel.com.
All right. So, did you want to do the giveaway on this one, or was that just on yours?
No. This is going to be on your stream. This is for your viewers.
So Allie, one of my mods, Allie, is going to be taking names to put in a spinning wheel. And at 10, since we actually started on time, at 10:10 EST, my time, we're going to spin the wheel and pick a winner from that. So if your audience, if you're interested, put a hat emoji in the chat, and I'll mention this again later on. And Allie will grab that. We'll grab your screen name and put that in the spinning wheel, and we'll spin it, and then we will we'll find out who you are, who wins.
Excellent. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah. And Allie, if you'll just remind people throughout the chat or throughout the interview to do that, that would be fabulous. So it can be any hat, Idiot Witch.
This is making it tricky for your mods.
This is my chat. This is what my chat does. They're called the feral chat for a reason. All right. Also, I'm going to not be watching you guys for the most part because we are going to be interviewing. We're going to start off the interview. Do you want to start off with random vocabulary from Gorlworld, or do you want a question?
I don't know which would be easier. We can start with some vocab.
Okay.
See what I picked up in my couple of videos.
Oh, that was your choice. Let me pull it up. All right, so let's start with an easy one.
Oh.
What do you think the word hater means? Hayderr. Hater.
Yeah. So I've seen this term pop up a lot. It seems like it's the crowd of people who hate watch Amberlin read. But I don't know where the spelling comes from.
It's the phonetic spelling of how she seems to pronounce it. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. Okay, yes, that was an easy one. Thank you.
And this next one is one of my favorites. Okay. What do you think the term dark time means?
Dark time?
Yep.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Well, let's take some fun out of it.
Okay, fine. Okay. No context clues.
Try to think of one. We're going to the store after work at dark time.
Dark time. Is that how she refers to night?
Yes. Good job.
I did not come across that in the few videos I saw of her.
That's one of my favorites is dark time.
Okay.
And one of the most recent ones, hecticana. What do you think hecticana means?
Oh, I know she uses the word hectic a lot.
Yeah, that's from
Hecticana.
fascination. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that there's a YouTube reactor channel called Hecticana.
Yes.
But I'm guessing that doesn't refer to him.
No, he took his
Okay.
name from the word.
Oh, okay. Is that just how she describes like something that's crazy or?
Pretty much.
Okay. I might be
job.
overthinking all of these.
Some of them are kind of weird. Some of these I don't actually know.
Oh, okay.
Like I have a list, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard some of these. But all right. So I've got a few questions from my audience from a while back, and there was a couple of them are really good, and the rest of them were crap. So thanks. No, I'm kidding. But one that I really wanted to ask you was, Midori Gale asked, how clear is the line between just commenting from a professional point of view and accidentally starting to diagnose?
Yeah.
And does it blur sometimes? And do you have to reshoot when you find yourself doing that?
Yeah, that is a good question. That was one that I picked up on when I was looking at some of the comments. So I'll say I typically don't ever reshoot. The reason for that being is that after I film, I'm lazy enough that I'll just cut it if I don't like it. But what I tried to communicate in some of my videos about Amberlin Reed and about other people that I react to and comment on is that I try to make it about my knowledge and my training and the process that I go through internally, whether I'm thinking through how I would treat someone who was presenting this way or with a certain diagnosis or something like that. And so in that sense, I'm making it less focused on the subject of that reaction video. I'm just using it as like a launching off point. Like, hey, they mentioned BPD, for example. Let's talk about that. How would I see somebody with that diagnosis? How would I diagnose somebody with that? And so it becomes less about that person. And so that's the separation that I try to make when I talk about people on the internet or people that I'm not seeing. Obviously, I'm not talking about my clients online anyway. So I think the line can be blurred, and a lot of people have definitely accused me of stepping over it. I try to make sure that I reiterate that I'm not prescribing any treatment for anybody that I'm commenting on. I'm not confirming or rejecting anybody's diagnoses that they claim. And so I, like what happened with the Amberlin Reed video, I try to take that at face value. And I say, okay, if that's the case, if she is coming in with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and that's what she's claiming, so I just kind of take that. And of course, some people don't like that either, so can't make everybody happy, and that's how I try to keep my professional life and my YouTube using my professional expertise separate.
So I'm going to ask you kind of a compounded question, because a lot of people did ask this question. But because Hellfire was being Hellfire, were you forewarned that Amber was a manipulative, narcissistic, pathological liar? And if not, did you see it for yourself once you started watching Amber's videos? And you can dodge this question if you would like, because I know this is kind of loaded, but I was interested. Were you warned by people before you started watching Amber videos about the many perceptions of Amber? And did it color your perception of her at all when you started reacting to her?
Yeah, that is a good question because, like you said, she is a very controversial figure, and there are a lot of different opinions about her. So the person who originally put me onto her videos, and I don't mind naming her now because she outed herself in the
You
comments
did, yeah.
of your videos. I think it was Amanda. So she told me that this is a controversial figure and that there's a lot of debate around her. She didn't really specify that, oh, people think she's narcissistic or abusive. I think maybe she said something about the potential abuse and things like that. But in that sense, like, she gave me a lot of videos. Like, I think she mentioned Mr. Snowflake's channel.
Hmm.
And then when I saw that it was hours and hours of
Yeah, yeah,
documentary, I was like, I'll just go into it blind. So,
yeah,
in the sense that I was forewarned that, hey, there's something off that makes people very, very polarized around this figure. Yes, I was aware of that. I did not know specifically what those were. And then in terms of picking that up, since I didn't know specifically, I think you picked up on that I was noticing some inconsistencies or things that didn't quite add up based on what I was hearing about her experience, or depending on who you ask, lack of experience with a mental health professional. Um, would I clock her as like a pathological liar or a narcissist or whatever else people might call her right away? No, I don't think so. Um, and I think, all of those labels are pretty heavy too. So people who have spent 5, 10 years watching her, they
yeah.
probably be in a much more comfortable space to make those kinds of sweeping judgments about her. And I was not.
Right, yeah. I try to tell people not to diagnose
Yeah.
because there are people who have spent like 11 years with her now.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get why people want to say these things, but I'm like, we really shouldn't be. None of us are qualified to be making these diagnoses.
Mm.
Um, Now I do want to ask you this question because again, this is the actual question. I noticed that you did I think there were 3 videos that you did about the mother who wrote the book about being the estranged mother from her
Oh yeah.
children,
Hmm.
and one of them you brought another therapist on who was specialized in narcissists,
Yes. That was
and
quite a controversial video.
I liked it. I liked it actually. I liked all 3 of them actually a lot.
Well, thank you.
So Stevie asked, what are the main diagnostic differences between BPD and NPD?
Yeah,
Um, and
very good
then,
question.
yeah, go ahead and finish that one, and then I'll ask you the second part of it.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, so I had to give some thought to this because, like I prefaced, personality disorders are not my normal wheelhouse. I have a
Gotcha.
understanding of them from my studies in grad school, some work in residency and internships and things like that. I have not made that my specialty. So, with a grain of salt, what I would say is that a lot of these things will look very similar up front. There will be big emotions. There will be what we perceive as manipulation in one way or another. And when we dig down into it, probably in a clinical setting, what we would typically see is what are the reasons for some of these behaviors? And I am completely open to correction from people who do specialize in this and who have a better kind of differential diagnosis. Um, but BPD, well, let's say narcissistic personality disorder would generally focus around, if they're willing to explain like the motivations behind what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing, it would tend to center around control. So if somebody feels like they are slipping out of that person's influence or control, that would tend to elicit some kind of response from the person. And there's specific features with narcissistic personality disorder. I want to be very clear because narcissism also gets thrown around colloquially.
Mhm.
NPD, you would see a lot of grandiosity, a desire to be seen as special or knowing that they're special. BPD might have some features of that, but again, a lot of it comes down to the motivation. Why are they saying that? why are they responding in the way that they're responding? And NPD is a lot about control.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then Zalens, sorry if I said your name wrong here. If I knew someone with BPD or NPD, how could I support them without ending up being so frustrated with them?
Yeah. I think it's actually interesting for those of us or those people who do watch kind of these channels, the Gorlworld influences and all this, and who think that maybe a lot of them could be diagnosable with personality disorders, that it might be fair to think through, okay, what keeps bringing me back to this channel? And then that could be potentially some insight for, okay, what keeps bringing me back to this relationship? If I'm at the point where I think they have some kind of personality disorder, unless they know that and they've disclosed that to me, if I think somebody has borderline, someone has NPD, then obviously there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on that would make me think that. And
Right.
so over that period of time, I'd have to examine, like, what keeps me coming back to this relationship? What do I find important and valuable about this relationship that keeps me wanting to maintain it? So in that sense, boundaries with any personality disorder are super important. It's totally fair to support somebody who is diagnosed with one of these disorders. Like, they deserve support, dignity, respect, just like anybody else. And those relationships just can feel very difficult at times, maybe more so than some other relationships. So in that sense, having boundaries is really important. Set out ahead of time, what am I willing to do for this person? What am I not willing to do for this person? Where does my own respect or self-respect, self-image come into this? How much am I willing to do for them? How far am I willing to go? And then being very firm with that would probably allow you to support them the best that you can and what they're willing to accept, able to accept without compromising your own values. But it's a really tough question, and that's going to be a different line for each person.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, because we've had, there are several people who have come forward in my chat and in my community who have the BPD, and they have long-term relationships that they've had their partners come forward and actually talk about being in relationships with them. And I think it's very sweet, actually, listening to the partners talk about negotiating the relationship with the partner with the BPD. So I think it takes a lot from what it sounds like. And I think that's great that there are people who have the emotional spoons to do that kind of stuff.
For sure. I would also add that, as you're talking about that and people having partners and things like that, you're not responsible for their emotions.
Right.
When you're with somebody in some kind of relationship with any kind of personality disorder, I think that's where people get really tripped up, that they feel responsible for somebody feeling okay in that relationship. And that's a really heavy burden to take on for anybody.
Yeah. Okay, so ready for some more terminology?
Sure, lay it on me.
What do you think? Well, this one might be easy though. What do you think a buffet is?
Is that just what she calls a buffet?
Yes.
Okay.
She does that one on purpose too. This one you might know, Delulu.
Delulu, yeah. Did that originate with her?
No.
Okay. Yeah, like delusional or crazy.
Yeah. I need a good one. Oh, this one might be a little weird because it's kind of situational, but what do you think dangling might mean?
Like
if I have a dangling ankle.
what? Okay, that's not what I was expecting. Wow.
Yeah, this one might be kind of hard.
This is pretty niche. Dangling.
Yeah, this one is very niche.
Would that be like if it's hurt or like injured somehow?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Okay.
Good job.
I don't know where it came from, but okay.
So she was walking one night and
Uh-huh.
she stumbled and she hurt her ankle. But the
Uh-huh.
way she described it later was she's like, my ankle was just dangling there. And so now every time she's injured something, she's like, she like had a cough or something. She's like,
Uh-huh.
my lung was dangling. And so now it's just kind of a running joke. So
So
anytime
funny.
she gets injured or something, she's like, my whatever is dangling. Um, so, I just lost it. So what
That's
do you think
amazing.
a pitcher is?
A picture?
A pitcher?
Like like a photo?
Nope.
Photo, okay. I thought that would have been the easiest, like the buffet
Oh, wait.
thing.
No. You were right. Sorry. My bad.
Okay.
I was, you were right. You were right. I was
Okay.
thinking in the reverse. I was thinking a picture. That's what I always think, but no, you're right. It's a photo.
Okay. This
A
too
lot of
confusing.
these are very spelling specific, which is kind of difficult to
Seems
do.
like it.
All right. So I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
What do you think when since you are not part of the community, like you're not part of the Amberverse, what was
Mhm.
your first thoughts when you were looking in to the community and you started
Yeah.
um, interacting with the community? Like, and it's okay if they weren't. It's okay to be honest.
Well,
But what were your first
yeah.
thoughts when you started interacting with the community after the
Right.
video went up?
Yeah, so I will say everyone was very supportive, like right off the bat. I think it was very cool to see. And I think that, there were some initial comments like, oh, people are going to eat you up in the comments. And, people are very opinionated and it's going to get ugly. On the whole, I didn't experience that. Of course, there were people with differing opinions, and a lot of people were saying, like, hey, you need a lot more context before you can start making any judgments about this, which I think is totally fair. So, other than like pointing out gaps in my knowledge, which I completely own and um, I'm not trying to cover that up. I think everyone was very supportive. I think a lot of the inside jokes and some of the vocabulary that I'm learning tonight threw me, like it was a completely different language going on in the comment section. How do I decipher this?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think the first thing was like when the video first started getting big, the first one, I was like, what did I get myself into? Like, I thought this was going to be like a couple hundred views. Like, I thought this was a small community, and all of you in the chat are going to laugh at that now. But just the level of passion around that, I think, was very intriguing to me because it's all fixated. Well, maybe not all, but like a lot of it originated with just like kind of hate watching this one person. And I find that fascinating that a community can form around that.
So I know you say you find that fascinating, but what exactly about it is fascinating to you? I'm gonna corner you
Like
with this one.
yeah, no, I think when I think of a community forming, it's around something that, I guess in this sense, something that everyone enjoys, but it tends to be, I would tend to think of it more of as like, um, we enjoy doing this activity together, or we enjoy X, Y, or Z, and then this is like, we enjoy dumping on this person.
Well, yeah,
Well,
unfortunately.
yeah. I don't want to stereotype it. I think there's a lot of community that's grown up around it, around a lot of people who have, like you said, talked about their own diagnoses, whether it's borderline or some other mental health challenge. And I think there's a lot of mutual support in that. And I've seen that in the comments. So I think there's a lot of kind of secondary structures around that. It's just interesting what gathered everybody in the first place.
Oh, I lost my train of thought. Crap. So, you're watching, you're observing from the outside, you're seeing the community and the way it's structured. Um, you see that people are hate watching. How do
Yeah.
you feel about the overall like mentality towards Amber when you look in from the outside? Like, do you feel, well, I mean, do you feel like we're being bullies? Do you feel like we're being unreasonable? Do you feel like there might be a deeper reasoning for some of the reactions? I don't know, along those lines? Because that's
Right.
how I normally see people from the outside
Mhm.
react to the community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. My thoughts would be that I wish that if she were trying to make some of these changes for herself, that she would do that within the privacy of her home and without a huge audience to kind of break down and evaluate every move that she makes. I think that would, I think for most people, that would generally be the healthier way to go about it because, yeah, it's just like online presence. It's you can't ever really erase it, and I think we like to be able to present what we would like to present to the world instead of just this like all the mess and all the product. But I think what might be interesting is that there's almost like this push and pull relationship between Amber and, if you want to call it, her community, where there's a certain feeding off of each other. And so I don't see that necessarily. I mean, there are a lot of people who are going to say things that I wouldn't agree with about her. So this is not saying like it's fair game and open season on Amberlin Reed. But I think there's a sense that, like, some of her lifestyle is funded and made possible by a lot of these people who enjoy hate watching her. And I'm using that as kind of a general term. I'm not trying to say like everybody hates her. And
right.
then there are some people, and there are a lot of the community builds off of her continuing to create the kind of content that she does. And so I don't think it would necessarily be like the healthiest of parasocial relationships, but there's a sense in that like it's a system that kind of keeps itself going.
The ecosystem of
Yeah.
Amber creating content and reactors reacting to the content, and then Amber typically tends to react to reactors, and it just keeps the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Um,
And so I don't want to come off as saying that it's like the healthiest of environments, but that it's something that's built up and seems to have its own momentum.
yeah. Um, so you were saying, you wish, especially with probably the therapy storyline that's going on right now, a lot of people will refer to the aspects of Amber's life as if it were a soap opera or a story,
Yeah.
like the therapy storyline. Um, but you were mentioning you felt that she would probably do best if she just kind of took that off screen. And I agree with you there. I would like for her to go get therapy. I would like to believe that she is getting
Sure.
therapy.
Yeah.
And I do also believe that it would be best to be done offline.
Hmm.
But do you think the need, because she seems to have like a need to want to tell the audience everything that she's doing at all times, as if she's, I don't know if she's like seeking approval or whatnot, but I feel like it's part of her parasocial relationship with the audience.
Hmm.
Do you see any of that? Or I mean, you've only watched a few videos of hers, but did you see any kind of like a reverse parasocial relationship, like her relationship with the audience versus the audience
Right.
having that relationship with her?
Yeah. Again, like you said, I have less context to base any guesses off of. Um, but from what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that in her own way, she interacts with her community a good bit. Now, she might not specifically be calling out reactors or anything like that. Maybe she has in the past. Um, but from what people are saying, she hears all the noise
Hmm.
and she responds to it. And so I wonder if there might be some element of like, as she continues to vlog all of this stuff, if that's her way of responding and being in that relationship, even if it's not, maybe even if it's to her detriment sometimes.
Now, do you think that, again, referring to this as a TV show,
Yeah.
do you think it might be possible that Amber is 100% acting? That the Amber that we see, yeah, no, this is just a thought experiment. That the
Yeah,
Amber that
that's
we see
fascinating.
through these videos is just 100% made up. That the storylines that she comes up with and everything, she's just making it up and using the feedback that she gets from the audience to continue to create this Amberlin character for us to consume.
Wow.
And we, the audience, are being duped. What do you think about that one? Just throwing it out there.
I think if that were true, that would be like equal parts hilarious and amazing. Because part of it is her longevity on YouTube. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know if in this theory or idea, if maybe she switched over to being a character at some point, and maybe earlier on was maybe like herself. That's fascinating to think about. I would think if she were playing a character and she were like writing out storylines and arcs and things like that, she might stick with some a little longer than she has.
Yeah, well,
That'd be my thought. Like some of them don't even play out from what I can tell, and everyone's
they're
just
very
like
short-lived.
Yeah.
Some of them are very short-lived. Do you, I'm trying to keep an eye on time here. Do you have any questions or comments that you want to ask me before we turn our attention to the chat? Who need to be behaving?
I guess I'm curious because I talked a little bit about what I think are the sociological elements related to this community and their connection to Amberlin Reed. And I don't know what the rest of the influencers in Gorlworld are like with their respective audiences. But like when you examine that from kind of your training in anthropology, I'm curious what you see in terms of the community.
I'm like you. The fact that people like it really is kind of a hate watching thing, but it's more like a reality TV thing. Like people don't necessarily hate watch reality television, but they do tend to watch it because it is a form of escapism for them. And it's also that whole like, wow, these people, my life's not that bad kind of a thing. And I feel like there's a little bit of that with Amber normally. And there's certain story arcs that she goes off on that seem to be more aggravating to people than others. I mean, there's certain ones that she's done that have gotten to me even, and I have to take a step back because I don't want to give it that much energy, and but yeah, the majority of people seem to be invested in it. Like like I said, a lot of people here have been watching her for years.
Right.
And it's kind of like the sunk cost fallacy. It's like, I've been watching for 6 years at this point, they just kind of want to see it out to the end. And I also think that there's like this little thread through most people on here, even the ones that tell you like they can't stand her, they hate her,
Yeah.
they don't like her at all, but they're like, but I would love to see her turn her life around. Or I would love to see her lose the weight.
Yeah.
So there's still like that little glimmer of hope that maybe this time she's gonna turn it around. So I find that fascinating that even the people who don't like her the most, even they are still like, maybe this time,
Yeah,
So,
and that actually brings up if I can turn a thought experiment on you.
yeah.
What do you think would happen if, let's say, there was like a magic button, she pushes it, and then like her life genuinely turns around. She's in like a healthy relationship. I guess her original goal was to lose weight, so she's losing weight and like doing all the right stuff. What do you think would happen to the community if like all the drama was suddenly gone?
Well, I mean, I know her community would change. She'd lose a good chunk of her community, but I also think that she would attract a new community. There would still be people from the older community would still be watching. Since she's already got the dedicated reactors, those people would continue to react because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I think it would be nice to be able to react to a positive story, But I think, because people also like a good redemption arc.
Mm,
So if she were to like turn it around and, start on a redemption arc,
yeah,
she would lose a lot of her hate watchers, but she would gain a lot of people who really want to see that happen. And the
yeah,
people that have hung on this long, who have kept that little kernel of hope, they would continue to watch because it's like it's finally paying off, you
yeah.
know.
Hmm.
So I mean, it would. I think she'd probably take a hit in her views, which is why I think she won't do it because she's scared.
Mm,
She's scared of taking the hit because this is her job and it
yeah,
would hurt her financially. But I think if she would just take the plunge,
yeah,
I think it would be positive for her in the long run. But
yeah.
the other end of that, though, is like she has such a bad reputation as far as behavior, and I don't know how to put this. Like, the people just have such a bad opinion of her. I don't know if she could really turn it around because for
Mm,
some people, she just can't be redeemed. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I would
It's
be
like you
curious
can't
about
please
like,
everybody.
yeah, about some of the reactors who I think, because of course, like we're not actually in on her private life, then
Right.
I think there'd be a lot of people who'd just be dissecting why this is another act, why this is just another
It,
story that he's trying to
yeah.
sell.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who are constantly, there are some people that no matter what she does, she's
Yeah,
lying, this is
sure.
fake, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And I think those people will always be there, even if she's completely turned around and is improving and all of that. So,
Yeah. Okay,
um,
that's fair. Thanks for
yeah,
entertaining that.
no, I think about it a lot. I ask the audience that a lot. I'm like, what would it take for her to, for you guys to forgive her? Some people are like, we can't.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Can I turn one more? I guess like this is kind of personal question, but you said like there are some things that even when you're filming that, some things kind of hit you and you can't find yourself being as objective as you would like to be
yeah.
when you're commenting or reacting. Like, what are some of those things that you've seen for other people or for yourself that seem to like really hit people the wrong way?
Um, I mean, to get into specifics, trigger warning.
Yeah.
She recently lost an animal,
Mm,
and she lost it due to her own negligence. Um, and that, I'm a pet parent, so that one kind of really pissed me off because it was completely avoidable,
uh,
but because of her own inability to keep track of her animals,
uh,
she lost that animal, and then she did nothing to try to recover the animal.
mm,
So that was something that really upset me, and it
sure.
really upset the community as well. Anytime her animals get
I imagine.
involved, it really gets to the community.
Hmm.
Um, and more recently, she's had a couple of her exes come forward and talk about their relationship with her, and it wasn't great. They weren't
Hmm.
great relationships. There were many, many issues and several accusations. And I think a lot of people were seeing maybe their own past bad relationships, or there's just confirmation there. And so a lot of people were reacting to that.
Hmm.
Um, Also, there was a lot of, oh, I knew that. We knew this was happening. And I mean, that one didn't really bug me as much, but there was some heavy shit coming
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So I mean, that would give anybody pause. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that when that stuff starts coming out, it stops being fun, I guess is where that
Yeah.
happens.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, you just kind of have to step away real fast and just let it kind of run its course and then come back to it or come at it at a new angle. Like since we last talked, I decided that I was, instead of tearing her down every time I react, I'm like, I'm going to pretend like I'm an am baby. Well, there you go. What do you think am baby means?
Like one of her supporters.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. I've come across that one.
So, so I'm trying to react as if I'm an am baby, and
Yeah.
what if she's
Wow.
telling the truth? What if
Right.
everything she says is real? So that's been fun for me. But it
Mhm.
does require a change of mind, and you got to come at it from a different angle. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah. So, do you think you're gonna continue watching? Are you gonna continue on in Girl World, or are you gonna close that door and slowly back away?
The door is shut for now. I do have some. I do have some like videos planned that are adjacent to things that people have commented about her. So one thing that struck me when we were talking on Monday was I think you were talking about she's in stages, right? That
Mhm. She has a cycle, yeah.
yeah, cycle. So something that kind of caught my ear with that is that within the addiction model and motivational interviewing, which I was trained in as an intern, is that we talk about the stages of change and that it's a cycle with addiction. And so I'll talk about it more in that video, but basically the big thing about that model and how it's different from other models of addiction is that relapse is considered a normal and normative process that's part of the change cycle. And so what we're trying to do is reduce the stigma and shame associated with relapsing because those are just old patterns that have a lot of inertia, and um, we're trying to change a very ingrained pattern. And so we expect the old behaviors to pop up sometimes. And what we're trying to do is just reduce the gap of time between when we relapse versus when we go back into that motivational state of being willing to make a change, and then trying to have a longer period of time between relapses. So,
That's really interesting.
yeah, I hope that'll be kind of applicable to how people see her patterns of behavior and her whether they believe them to be genuine attempts at change or not.
I mean, regardless, it's nice to have that kind of a model to look at, especially to compare. Because I personally think her cycle. Somebody way back actually sat down and drew out a diagram of her cycle, and I just
Uh-huh.
kind of feel like at this point it needs to be updated. But I mean, after your video, maybe that would be a good thing to do is sit down with that and kind of reevaluate her cycle.
Yeah.
Because I did like the video you put out talking about dishonesty with your, I want to say client, but that's not the word
Yeah.
I want.
But yeah, I use the word clients.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So how to deal with dishonesty when you're working with a patient or a client.
Yeah.
I do want to shout out Nerfy. Thank you for those gifted memberships, and also it's a long time no see. Thanks for coming in. Do you have anything else? Because if not, I'm going to turn attention to the
Feel free.
audience.
Yes. Let's let them have their day.
Oh, don't tell them that. You'll regret that one. All right. Oh, people want to know. Well, people want to know if you will do maybe consider other Girl World personalities, like Glitter and Lasers, Anna O'Brien.
That's almost come up a couple of times. Yeah.
I cover Anna a lot. I like Anna, actually. I like her as a person. I think she's annoying as hell, but she is nowhere near as bad as the rest of the girls.
Huh.
I don't want him to cover Foodie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people warning me off of her, so
Don't do
I am not planning on branching out to any of the other ones right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. He's not going to do it. We've scared him away.
Successfully, yes.
Yeah. Well, if you ever do, don't do Foodie. Just don't. You scar this poor man. He'll never do anything ever again if you shoot him that way. Do you guys have any actual questions?
I think I saw some questions earlier up, but you'd have to scroll really far to get to them.
Actually, I think my mods were going to pull questions for me and
great.
put them in the chat thing. But let me double check. If you guys want to chat, if you would like if the people in chat would like to have a question answered, put 2 large question marks in front of it so that my mods can see it easily. I don't promise we'll get to all of them, but I will try to do a few here. And
Oh,
also the hat drawing thing.
yeah. Should we do that while people are asking? Asking questions. My job was the wheel, not the questions. Division of labor.
I I asked Ellie if she would do it. She's taking her job very seriously, and I appreciate that. Actually, yes, we should probably do the hat drawing because I said around 10:10 we were going to do that. So
Okay, that's fair.
last chance to put your name in for the hat drawing, and then Allie's going to do it. So
Yeah. And I'll say for the drawing, if you end up winning, you can DM me on Instagram. It's therapy.number2day. Or you can check out my YouTube channel, and then my Instagram and my email address are on there. So you can contact me that way. If you'd prefer it to go through Tiny Blue, she's got the Discord, so that's probably a lot more accessible. And then she can get you my contact information as well. But just reach out to me. I don't know how I'm going to verify that it's the right person, but we'll find out.
Allie will do it because that's her job.
Okay, yeah. Allie will figure it all out, and then we'll get you a hat somehow.
Stevie, I asked your question earlier, so if you didn't hear it, I promise you he answered that one because I wrote it down specifically just for you. I'm looking at this camera, not that camera. Crap, I lost it. There was something about food addicts. I don't know if you do this kind of stuff, but what are both of our opinions on the food addicts who just stop eating all food and now only drinks? That's from Ruby. I don't know, Ruby. Why would you stop eating food? Food is so delicious. Clearly.
That's a new concept for me. I didn't know of anybody who would do that.
I maybe thinking like protein shakes or doing like smoothies.
Yeah. Like you'd have to have a very specific and regimented diet, I would imagine, to stay healthy for that.
Yeah, or just like an iron will, honestly. Like I've tried to do I've tried to do Slim Fast in the past, and I'm sorry, that shit don't work. So and I mean I drink protein shakes off and on, but that's just because I have like a weird appetite that, sometimes I'm hungry and sometimes I'm not.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine giving up food altogether.
I've also read that there's something to the like physical act of chewing food and eating it that obviously drinking doesn't replace, and so we tend to feel less full or satisfied when we're drinking instead of eating.
I appreciate the questions about food, y'all, but he's not a dietitian. He's a therapist. Many people watch because Gorlworld characters remind them of people in their lives. What are your thoughts on the Catharsis?
Oh, is it Catharsis?
Thank you. I know that word. What's your thoughts on the catharsis of that? Would you consider that healthy?
Oh man. So the concept reminds me of what we have to watch out for in the counseling relationship of transference and countertransference, where sometimes a client will see me as perhaps like a male authoritative figure that they've had in their past, or unfortunately I've shared my name with some people's exes.
Oops.
Yeah, right. I couldn't do anything about that.
You're right.
And sometimes there'll be times when I see a person from my past in my client in front of me. If I have a more elderly client, maybe I might see them as a parent figure or something like that. And so at least within that, I can only speak to that kind of transference and countertransference that we try to be aware that that's going on. And so I would say that's important too if you're watching any of these influencers because they remind you of somebody. Be aware that like, hey, this is potentially triggering for me. This could potentially have an effect on how I think about her, how I judge her, how I deal with my emotions after watching one of her videos. And so I think it's just like self-monitoring, being aware. It doesn't have to be an unhealthy thing. And I think it's just more so the impact that has on you. How are you feeling as you walk away from the video? Is if you keep coming back, what's the reason for that? So that would be what I would suggest.
There was one about. Nope, I did that one. Well, I'll look for it again. Nerfy says, or asks, and Nerfy dropped a bunch of stuff. So, do you feel that social media is making mental health better or worse in terms of people with disorders being depicted?
Oh, yeah. I've talked about social media on some of my past videos. So if we're talking specifically about the depictions of disorders, I think there's a balance. I think in the early spaces when people found communities and were able to talk more openly about their diagnoses and find other people that, hey, I'm not the only person struggling with this. Hey, like I have this weird symptom that's not in the DSM, but like, wow, it's actually a feature and like it's very common across people have this diagnosis. I think that's very powerful for that solidarity and that support. Where I think it might be unhelpful is when a diagnosis becomes a trend. And when people want to play that up because it's cool, or I don't even know why it would necessarily be considered cool any more than like any other feature that somebody has. But I think that's where it can be kind of problematic, where people are maybe making a diagnosis more colloquial, and if we can say like dumbing it down to have it become like, oh, I'm just quirky because I have this diagnosis. That's not how they were intended to be used. So I think we're more so in that swing of the pendulum where a lot of it can be unhelpful right now. But I hope it moves back, and there's still a lot of spaces where mental health is being talked about and discussed in a healthy way. So I just hope that we can navigate towards those more frequently.
Well, I think this one kind of builds on what you were saying there. Do you think parasocial relationships affect how people form real life relationships?
Yeah, this is kind of a weird thing. This is something that I've anecdotally seen in a lot of my clients. So this is not necessarily research based. This is speaking from my experience seeing clients. A lot of my college students now are very hyper aware of how people, and this is just like and a vague unseen audience will see what they say or do, even when there's nobody really there, even when it's just a person-to-person interaction within the privacy of their homes. So I don't know whether that's like a social media thing where you just kind of expect everything to be documented and dissected all the time, but that's led to a lot of anxiety and a kind of like hyperfixation on how my clients present, and they're very sensitive to ever saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, and it's mortifying for them. Like they will avoid people, situations because they felt like they messed up. And I don't know necessarily, again, whether it's a direct tie to having a lot of things being documented online, but I think there could be a connection there. Again, not there. I don't know that there's any research to that effect. This is just kind of what I think from seeing some of my clients and talking with them.
That's interesting, though. The internet's an interesting place.
Yeah.
I think this one is kind of an important question to ask. Is it possible to heal or improve from a personality disorder?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I talked about in the first video, dialectical behavior therapy is kind of your first line. And what it goes through is basically you start with, so this was specifically for borderline. This was developed by Marsha Linehan, I believe was diagnosed herself with borderline personality disorder, and she developed this therapy to help people who had the same diagnosis. So you start with distress tolerance skills. skills that allow us to feel our emotions without reacting so strongly or destructively. And we talk about emotion regulation, a lot of these skills that build on each other so that we can handle difficult conversations, difficult parts of relationships, perceiving that we're being rejected or abandoned, and then being able to examine the reality of what's actually happening. So a lot of those kind of foundational skills, and then we progress onto interpersonal effectiveness. How are we effective in our communications, in person-to-person relationships and intimate relationships, social relationships? How can we navigate those well? And so this is where it's kind of hard to say about a personality disorder if it's ever like cured, because you can develop the skills to relate effectively so that you no longer meet the criteria for the personality disorder. Does that mean it's gone or healed? I don't know. I think that's anyone's kind of interpretation for that.
I thought that was a good one for people to hear. Let's see. Okay, so I'm kind of mashing a couple together. What are your thoughts on people using AI therapists and or app guided therapy? Not like BetterHelp, but like just AI. There's no human on the other side. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Are the AI overlords good therapists?
So yeah, I had a video on this recently. So in a study, people could tell the difference. So they had couples counseling prompts, and they fed them to some therapists. They fed the same prompts to some AI therapist bots, and people could tell the difference between the two 50% of the time.
Oh.
So for all intents and purposes, we're indistinguishable when it's just text. So I don't know whether that's considered good or bad, but there are definitely some features in terms of feeling heard and understood, understanding cultural nuance and addressing it, things like that, that the AI actually did better than people. So I think therapists, I think it's going to be inevitable that AI gets integrated at some point into mental health. And we've already been receiving emails about guidance on how to incorporate it properly and ethically. So I think we have some work to do, that we can't just assume that, oh, the counseling relationship is the most important, so we can just rest secure in that and that we're irreplaceable. No, I think there's a lot of work for therapists to do to make sure we're practicing ethically and practicing well, being effective in both our communication and our interventions that we use, so that we can continue to utilize AI instead of having it replace us because we're just subpar.
Well, I mean, I personally view it as a tool, and like any tool, if you don't learn how to use it, you're gonna get hurt by it.
Yeah.
Some of these are teeny tiny. Hang on. Okay, so as a therapist, did I ask you this something like this already? How does body language figure in to both your diagnosis and your treatment? For instance, avoiding looking at specific thing or person when talking, or the concept of telling signs. Just FYI, I mean, avoiding looking at things is not necessarily a tell of something. I mean, people with various problems don't tend to look at things in general. So, but how do you use body language at all, or nonverbal communication at all when you're doing face-to-face?
Yes, absolutely, but maybe not in the way that people are asking about. So I'm not going to say, oh, this person was avoiding all eye contact with me, they must have social anxiety disorder. It's not that cut and dry and straightforward.
Right.
I don't tend to use it a lot in terms of diagnosing, but in terms of giving feedback to the client and drawing their awareness to it. Hey, I noticed that you're not making a lot of eye contact today. What's going on? Especially if that's different from their baseline. So I'm looking for, like, after I've gotten to know them a little bit, I'll kind of recognize how they tend to present. So if something differs in that regard, then I know to point it out and ask about it, not in a sense of like, hey, you're doing something wrong today, or hey, you look a little evasive, but just drawing their attention to it and letting them kind of explain and tell their story of why something might be different today.
So you're kind of using it as a way to bring the patient's attention to their own behavior.
Yes.
Yeah. Question on this one. I'm gonna read this one because I think I know where this is going. Why would someone who has trauma utilize it and dump it onto others, but still own it as a victim mentality? Did that make sense?
Can you read it again, please?
Yeah. Why would someone, I'm going to try to reword it a little bit. I think this is not a first language. Why would someone who has trauma utilize it and dump it on others, but still have a victim mentality?
Oh, I'm guessing that they might be talking about like someone who has experienced trauma and then like maybe their emotions are very big and sometimes that can feel oppressive to the people around them, but then they'll still say like they're the victim or that their people are, I don't know, being unsupportive of them. Yeah, my guess would be that that can happen in some cases where if we're not able to regulate our responses, and PTSD, if we're talking specifically about that, is an overactive response, stress response, then we're not going to have a lot of that emotional regulation that I was talking about with DBT and personality disorders as well. And so sometimes those emotions will spill out and affect other people. Some of the markers and the symptoms for PTSD are emotional reactivity, hypersensitivity, hypervigilance. And so people will tend to have very big reactions when something's triggered with that trauma. And there could be any number of reasons, like shame about how big their response was, feelings of guilt for hurting somebody near them, that it might be easier sometimes to pass it off as like, well, you know, you said this, you shouldn't have said that. You did this, you shouldn't have done that. And I don't know if that's what they were trying to get at, but it sounds like a personal experience that they've had. And so it's hard supporting and caring for somebody who's dealing with a lot of trauma. So I feel that.
Why do you think somebody who is a victim of trauma, and this is a hypothetical, why do you think someone who is a victim of trauma would weaponize the trauma to use against someone else?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend on the context and the situations, but a lot of trauma can be about power and control, but it can also be about safety and trust. And so if issues of like safety and trust, if that person doesn't feel safe with anyone or feel like they can trust anybody, maybe it's possible that whatever tools they have, whether it be weaponizing their trauma or some other tool or, you know, whatever, might use that as their means of being able to control the environment or feel like they have some sense of like, I can keep myself safe. Yeah, without knowing more, I probably couldn't say much more than that.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit complicated. It is, well, 5 minutes after. Guys, I'm going to cut off the questions now because we were really only going to do this for about an hour. And there were more questions than we had time for, but I do appreciate everybody putting questions in. Did we get a hat? Did we get a winner for the hat? Yes, Allie, wheel. It's Allie's turn to shine, yes. Drum roll. Maybe. Any final words before we have our winner? And
I know I'm just super thankful for you having me on, and for the privilege of being able to talk about mental health and be able to have this conversation with you. Really appreciate everyone in the chat being supportive and asking questions. For people who have further questions or disagree with something that I said, that's totally fair too. Please talk with your own therapist or mental health professional and, sort that out, how that's going to look for you if your experience doesn't match with something that I said or the tools that you're using aren't what I said.
Do you want to drop your social media so people can find you?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube, obviously, at, what is it? Therapy Today. And it's, do I have a 2 in that one as well? I think it is. So at Therapy number 2 Day.
On Instagram?
On Instagram, yeah, it's therapy.today, but I can't ever keep those straight. So just go to the YouTube channel. If you search Therapy Today in the search bar, one of my videos should pop up.
Yes. And they are all good videos. I really enjoy those. It looks like, is it Moab? It looks like Moab is the winner.
Oh, I missed it.
Well, it went real fast. So
yeah.
Where'd you go, Moab? So Moab, you are the winner. Moab 17. We have a winner.
Congratulations. Yeah, like I said, DM me and we'll figure out how to get you the hat, whether I order it and have it shipped to you, or if I can get a gift card somehow for the store. I'll ask the owners if they can do something like that.
We will get you guys connected one way or the other. If you guys don't connect on your own, I'm just, using the term. But thank you very much for coming on the channel, and thanks for having me on your channel, and thanks for putting up with me and my technical inabilities, because I about gave myself a heart attack earlier.
It came off a lot smoother than it did on Monday, so thank you for all this and setting it up. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, hopefully maybe someday we can do this in the future, like in the future, some other time. And I'm going to let you go. And chat, thank you all for being a good chat. And thank you, my mods, for being good mods. So
Yes, absolutely. What a blessing.
all right. Okay, bye-bye.